Hi, welcome. Ultimate Frisbee is in the air, and this is Scubalicious Ultimate. This is Flamecast, the second iteration, and if you were there on Saturday for the Flamethrowers home opener, you were really given an amazing treat. It was a fantastic game. It was very exciting, and we're going to talk about it. And hey, where's my prop? We're going to do stunts here. Yes, we're going to talk about the San Francisco Flamethrowers with my guest and head coach, Ryo Kawaoka. Now we're going to do just a little bit of something here, so we're going to try to bear with us as we are going to flip this horizontally, and we're all good to go. Awesome. Hi. So it was an amazing game on Saturday. The crowd was rocking. They're saying there's like 1,000+ people, and it was a very competitive game. And so we're going to break down the highs and lows, the surprises, and look at the stats and get some feedback from the coach here. So you were there. What'd you see? What'd you like?
I love the fans. I'm glad to see that there are hundreds of folks there.
Hundreds. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think
that's okay.
We'll
go hundreds, multiple hundreds.
I think we had one of the top crowds in the league this weekend. So it was great to see the crowd cheering us on, and I'm glad we create some moments for them as well to cheer on.
It was good. So you saw the score. It was very close. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised at that?
No. I thought that we knew that their offense was going to be pretty strong. We weren't too surprised at their handler-centric offense, and we were trying to battle that throughout the game. But we also left some points on the table. There were a couple of end-of-quarter situations that we didn't execute on. We let the time lapse, but luckily we were also able to execute on some of those end-of-quarter things too. So, pluses and minuses throughout the game.
Right, we're going to get to pluses and minuses. How do you interpret the statistics? What does a coach look for? So you're looking at the individual players that there. Cassidy did his job, offense and defense. Was that a surprise?
I think that he was coming off of, he had been traveling for a couple of weeks, kind of like Evan Boucher on the other side of the disc. And he showed up and played a big game. And we were hoping to definitely have him as a runner, but he also put some big bombs out there as well.
Yeah, he's nice, a very versatile player. And if you've seen him play from beach to Roughnecks to the Spiders in the last few years, an amazing player. So that was good. Yeah. So the time you had a certain amount of people who were doing, let me get the stats in front of me, who were doing heavy minutes out there, 30 minutes. So what was dictating who was playing those heavy minutes?
So part of it was we wanted to set the tone with our offense, build a rhythm, build some chemistry out there. We're also taking a lot of notes, and so those were the folks that were trying out our offensive sets that we wanted to see throughout the pro season, and so it was good to see that. They're not going to be the same folks every week, but that was a core group of players that we wanted to leverage, and they executed a pretty good game plan.
So they executed a game plan. How much was it your sort of scripting versus, we did it in practice and you just let it go on autopilot?
It's a lot of autopilot. We have good field leaders, field generals, but there's a few rules that we were playing by. We're trying to not run consecutive sets to confuse the defense so that they don't run the same poaches. And one of the things that we want to work really hard on this year is attacking the open side of the Frisbee. We have a lot of skills, we have a lot of disc skills to break the mark, but I also want to see, given that the field is a lot wider, let's attack the open side. What is not enough space on the open side, and we wanted to learn that a little bit.
That's an interesting concept, taking advantage. So you're just going to go with the force and take advantage of the wider field.
That's
very
right.
Cool. Very good. I like that. So, yeah, just going back down the minutes, Patrick Bayless did 30 minutes, Bo Kittredge did 31, Grant Lindsley did 30, Cassidy did 36, Joel Schlackett did 30, Marcelo Sanchez did 30, Mac Taylor did 28. Those are nice numbers. Those are nice numbers to do. Then you had a drop off here on some of the players. They did 28, 30, but some of them, what was dictating some of the numbers that were doing 18, 17? Were you trying to work them into the system?
So a lot of those are driven by the kinds of points they were playing. So that list that you went off of was largely the O-line, and so if they're often, if they're receiving the pull, they were playing, and so they're building. We were taking offensive notes with that line, building chemistry. The other folks were playing D points, and so they were splitting the rest of the D points, and they got to play a lot of minutes if they had a lot of turnovers. But we're hoping to score under 8 throws as well.
Is that the ticket? That's the goal. 8 throws.
Usually, anything above 10 is very challenging, especially on the pro-size field. 10 throws, 12, particularly 12 throws and above, you start seeing turnovers.
So is this energy management?
Exactly, and so if we can execute at 8 throws is the sweet spot. 5 to 8
That's
throws.
an interesting statistic. I've never heard that. If it's been mentioned, I've never noticed that. So that's good to know. So is it like 2-3, a couple, 2-3 throws and then down the field?
Exactly, and basically, even if you're swinging the disc back and forth, the downfield players are trying to get open while the disc is in the air. And if you keep having to swing back and forth in a traditional horizontal look, for example, you are burning the cutters.
You're exhausting the cutters. Exactly. Yeah.
So if you can get it in 5 to 8 throws, that's the sweet spot for the cutters.
So just to go back onto the open game, playing on a narrow field, the goal mainly is to try to break the mark.
That's right. So there's a lot more space over there. The defenders aren't, downfield defenders aren't playing as aggressively over there. And so there's space to attack too. And with the right throwers, with the right, both physical balance and then team balance, attacking that space works really well.
That's nice to be able to compare and contrast. Thank you for that explanation. So looking at statistics here, there's a lot of them here, and I'm wondering, looking at the stats, do you look at the stats? Are these important to you post-game?
I look at the stats, and I take more stats reviewing the film as well.
So you do. Okay, so looking at these stats, what for a team's health and performance, what are you looking for? Are you looking for sort of a bell curve where you have the stars versus the role players? Or are you looking for something that's flat, that everybody's participating on an even level?
At this point of the season, we're trying to get everyone participating as much as possible. Of course, we want to have the right chemistry and the right teams to execute and to have a higher percentage on offense if we can. But we want to give everyone reps, and we had to make some strategic calls on the roster. We have more than 20 players on the team, but we can only roster 20 per game day, and so those folks who didn't get a chance to play this weekend will get to play next weekend.
So what were you trying to do to the Spiders that they were able to do? You mentioned it earlier. They were a handler-centric set. You were trying to shut that down. Was there something else you were trying to do?
So part of it is shutting down their handler set,
right.
And that's a combination of forcing their cutters upfield and throws upfield, or forcing their handlers to stay back and swing it back and forth. I think that the Spiders had a lot of success both ways, and so in the end it came down to grit and individual matchups, and our team coming through with a few of those.
So with this score, 34-29, is in pro ranks, that's not a blowout, but is that easily won, or is that that's a really competitive game?
That was a competitive game.
I thought so.
I thought they played great. I think Tyler Grant had a pretty good game plan against both our offense and against our defense.
Yeah.
So it was a great matchup. I'm glad we can go back and try to address some things immediately going to San Jose next weekend.
So have you practiced?
Before this weekend, yes.
Okay, so you've practiced for this weekend, and so it's going to be very interesting because the Spiders are going to they've got a great crowd down there, and they're going to be very psyched up that they did well on an away game, and to go for their home opener next week, this Saturday, is going to be very interesting. And any other fine-tuning that you're trying to look at that you saw that you'd like to exploit, or at least try to work on?
Yeah, I think there were certain individuals that played really well for the Spiders, so we need to have a game plan for them. And on our side, I think we did some of our fundamental things pretty well, so we can implement some experimental ideas in this coming game.
I like that. So I won't ask you to divulge them, but I would definitely like down the road to see, looking at some tendencies, and maybe off camera, I'd love to see what those are, so I can appreciate what you're trying to do against other opponents. So Greg Cohn, just to go over some of the people who did well. Greg Cohn did well on defense. Grant Lindsley, I'm going to mess his name. Sorry, Grant. He did well offense. 6 goals, 2 assists, 25 touches, and Greg had 2 Ds. 2 D points of 20 D points and 1 pull. What does this mean? What does this stat mean?
I think that was the pull to start the point. I think they track the number of pulls that an individual has, and then on defense, certain players will be pulling more often than not. Usually Greg's one of our key pullers, but this week we want to try have a tryout for the rest of the team as well.
So on pulls, the guy who's really fun to watch is Cody Kirkland.
That's right.
And I had the pleasure of playing with him on Winter League. He was on my team, and he would throw it out over the parking lot. So I would say that hopefully sometime during the season you'll have him pull out over the crowd. Because I think you're going to find that you'll get a lot ooh and I factor, because he's amazingly accurate.
He was pulling amazing all day on Saturday, and it was definitely a weapon, and we're going to leverage that a lot in the coming weeks.
Good, no, it's good. He's a great kid and very talented, and I'm glad that he's on. I'm glad he's in pro, but I'm glad he's on the Flamethrowers. He's a good kid, and he's an amazingly pull. So if you weren't there on Saturday, you really appreciate his pull. I know that people played on his Winter League team were in awe. It was like seeing a UFO. But if you get him to really arc it over the crowd, you're going to see a big ooh and ah.
We'll get the cameramen to make sure they capture that.
That'll be great. Yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, is there anything else you want to add about this?
I think that hopefully you got to see. I mean, despite the lack of balance for the O players playing a lot of points, there was a lot of balance throughout the rest of the team, and hopefully they got a chance to get their feet wet, get reps underneath them, because it is a long season and it's still early in the season, so they're still getting their pro legs ready.
Which I'm glad you mentioned. So I wanted to look at the plus and minuses, and talking about the bell curve versus flat statistics. Going down with Patrick Bayless had 7 plus and minus, Greg Cohen had 6, Grant Lindsley had 7, Cassidy Rasmussen had 11, Joel Schlockett had 8, and Marcelo Sanchez had 6, and it sort of dropped off from there. So were you looking for everybody to be around 6, or do you want everybody to pop up and be around 11? How do you gauge that?
I think we want everyone. So like you said, right, 11's on the high end. Everyone else, the rest of the O team was around 6 or 7. We want the D players to be between 4 and 6, and greater than that would be great. And so I think we were a little disappointed as a D team, not able to convert in some situations, but also we weren't getting enough Ds. We weren't getting enough stops, and so we'll rectify that next week. But again, San Jose played really well.
They played amazingly. So I'm glad you clarified that, because it was a high-scoring game and a very small point differential of 5. And just looking at the efficiencies were fractions, and I would love to look at a year's worth of data to go, see the ebbs and flows and really how to interpret that. So that's very interesting that you mentioned that. You give a lot of time to Bo. Bo was kind of quiet. He played a lot of minutes, but he was quiet. He was very strategic in his play, but there was no big drama moment. But he was solid. And that's uncharacteristic. I mean, it's not uncharacteristic, but there was no those big hero moments.
Yeah, and I think that's always been curious for me playing or watching pro with Bo, is that the number of moments that we were creating with Bo. It's tough on the legs, and we're starting quarters that way. But I think that we have a lot of weapons on the team.
Sure.
Bo's picking and choosing his spots.
Exactly. He's a facilitator.
And actually, it was pretty strategic in that he was involved a lot early. And then as the game wore on, we threw him into a D point here or there. And so, we used him a lot early, and then the game had its own moods, and we were able to use Marcelo Sanchez a lot. I think Patrick Bayless played really well, and then at the middle of the game it was the Grant and Cassidy show.
And so, question about you. You didn't necessarily pull away in the fourth quarter, but you added more. The point differentiator increased a little bit. So does that come down to conditioning? Does that come down to better? You didn't have the mental hiccups in the fourth quarter, and just in general, as you're going in the year, the fourth quarter is where stamina and mental capability, you want to be sharp. So how did it look like in the fourth quarter?
Going into the fourth quarter, I think any team that's within 5 points has a shot. And so definitely the point differential was still within that range. We needed to stay focused. So as a team, we had to focus, making sure that we were going to play mentally strong in the fourth quarter, but it also came down to legs. I think that the style of offense that the San Jose team was running was very. They had four cutters including their handlers, always active, and I think that was challenging for us, but also challenging to sustain for four quarters. And so they were making adjustments. They were putting different players in as well. But that was the first game of the season. They were getting their legs underneath them as well. Exactly.
The other thing I was noticing is, and I'm sorry if I'm using jargon, I wanted to explain what plus minus is, and I'll notice on the website about what makes up plus minus on the statistics here. It's an aggregate of O and D and what you're doing between drops and completions, receptions, goals, things like that. That said, I was looking at the passing percentage. The majority of everybody was up in the high 80s, 90s, 100s. That's pretty cool. Is that expected? Is this unusual at this level? Should everybody be at that in the high 90s?
It should be in the high 90s, and you'll see in a really tight game, in a great competitive game, when everyone's executing, it's only a 3-point game. It's those 3 passes that got turned over. They were never recovered from. I'll use jargon too. The breaks, the defensive team scored their breaks, and they didn't turn the disc over. It wasn't a 5 turnover point, for example, and that's what we expect. And we expect high efficiency from our defensive teams as well.
Well, very good. Yeah, so it was illuminating, really looking in and digging into the stats and trying to understand in relationship to the game and getting Yo's feedback here. So it really makes enjoying the game, looking at the game, and I'm going to be down in San Jose talking with the Spiders after the game, and really it helps me really compare and contrast these two dynamic teams and how they're approaching. And I'd love to hear Tyler Grant, how he's preparing or how he did prepare for the last game and what's going to happen after on Saturday's game. So anything else you want to add, Yo?
No, I want to thank the fans again for showing up to a great game and cheering us on, and we'll be in San Jose this coming Saturday. It's
going to be a great game. It's going to be a ruckus game. To the owners of the Flamethrowers, you did a great job bringing all the high school students there. I know my team was excited. They were pumped. And all the parents that came away going, you need to make us aware of when these games are, because we loved it, and I know the kids loved it. And so, yes, I'd say, they should have known, but absolutely we're going to make them aware. And they're not in the minority. There's a lot of parents that were very excited about the experience. So kudos to you guys for putting on an excellent show. Kudos to you for doing a great job. And the next iteration, ideally for Flamecast, hopefully down the road we'll do this a handful of times to really touch in with the teams how it's going towards their quest of a championship. This is what they're going for, and I hope they get it. They started out on the right good track. So Lawrence McKendall, Ryo Kawaoka, Flamecast number 2. We'll see you later. Take care.
Thank you much.